How many times have you tried to lose weight? And how many of those times have you been successful? Chances are you've burned out a ton, you've crash dieted, and you've depleted willpower. But what if I told you that every aspect of your diet, even whether you felt full or not, was completely psychological? That the composition of your food, the times you eat, and even how you organize your plate can all impact your satiety? And what if I told you that there were simple rules that you could follow to not only boost your willpower, but make dieting a whole lot easier? Well, that's exactly the case. And today I'm going to outline 5 simple rules that'll not only make dieting a whole lot easier, but they're going to improve your body composition greater than if you had just calorically restricted or just increased exercise. Now, the reason for this is going to be because these tips are going to directly reduce the amount of cortisol that you're producing. So follow along and discover how to hack your nervous system so you can make weight loss feel effortless. Before we get into this, I want to clarify that I am not a scientist, doctor, or psychologist. This is just what I figured out about the nervous system. Feel free to try out what I'm suggesting here and see for yourself whether you notice a difference or not. Just remember to come back and comment down below whether it did. Tip number 1 is to eat ingredients, not foods. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, the more ingredients that you combine when you make your food, the more anticipation you're going to be creating and the more dopamine you're going to be secreting. By combining less foods, your brain is not only going to be able to detect satiety better, but you're also going to be giving your body evolutionarily consistent feedback on what you're eating. Now, what do I mean by this? So in nature, you're rarely going to find a combination of fats and carbs and sugar as palatable as something like a donut. That's why when we eat a donut, it's often hard to stop at just one. It's literally because your taste buds are completely overwhelmed and your brain is unable to process the amount of dopamine that's being released. So what happens when you spike your dopamine that high? You crash right afterwards, and then your brain says, I want more. On the other hand, if you'd eaten the ingredients of that donut, you probably would have felt a lot more satiated because your brain would have been able to distinguish what was happening. Even though it was unhealthy, you probably would have had a spoonful of sugar and thought, that's enough. And maybe you would have had a spoonful of butter and thought, that's enough. Or maybe a spoonful of flour. Although who's having a spoonful of flour, because that's just super dry, am I right? But even if you'd had a second spoonful or a third, you would have gotten sick of it way quicker than when you combined all of them to make it taste that much better. Now, I don't think anyone watching this video would be able to consume the vast amount of flour, sugar, and butter that's present in a box of donuts if they were given those ingredients separately. So the same principle applies when we're making our meals. So if you're someone that's been eating donuts every day, just by the virtue of switching to some more whole, unprocessed foods, you're going to be spiking your dopamine way less and bringing your brain closer to those signals that it would get in nature. If you're someone who's already been eating whole, unprocessed foods and you're looking to take things to the next level, then I suggest stripping down your meals even more and separating it by carbs, veggies, protein, and fat. By doing this, you're going to be able to give your brain and your body that much more information about what it's eating and what it's processing. That's going to help nutrient partitioning, that's going to help your satiety cues, and it's going to help your blood sugar control throughout the day. Tip number 2 is to eat protein and fats before your carbs. When you eat just pure carbs, what you're doing is sending your brain on a dopamine roller coaster. You get this insane high, this insane raise in blood sugar, and then a crash right afterwards. Having protein and fat together first, you're going to be stabilizing your blood sugar, and your adrenals are going to have to work that much less, and you're going to produce that much less cortisol to process that meal. If you think about this in nature, it would be very common to kill an animal and then eat the meat, which would be mostly protein and fat. So our bodies are primed to detect this combination of macronutrients as a signal of satiety. So after you have your protein and fat, you're also going to want to have your carbs because they're going to help release serotonin and give you that feel-good sensation in the brain. So by having protein and fat first, and then your carbs, we can make a meal that much more satiating and that much more fulfilling. Tip number 3 is to eat at the same times every day. We've already talked about how we should make our meals into ingredients so that we minimize that anticipatory response. There's another component to this to where your brain and body can learn to expect nutrition at certain times and then be primed to absorb that nutrition at those times. The less stressful your meal is, the more nutrition is going to be absorbed and the more satiated you're going to feel. So by eating your meals at the same time every day, or relatively the same time, you're going to make things very predictable on your nervous system, and you're going to have that much lower of a cortisol spike. Tip number 4, and this is going to be a strange one, but hear me out. Eat on a plate that's not colorful. Now, why would I say that? When we eat, our brain gets stimulation not just from the food we're eating, but every aspect of the meal. That includes the colors on your plate and the color of the plate itself. That's why you're going to get so excited when you go to a restaurant and you eat a nice big dinner on a fancy plate surrounded by entertainment and live music. It's because you're spiking your dopamine super high with all of these new experiences, and your brain is taking it in and it's combining it and getting that anticipatory response. So the color of your plate adds to the experience of your meal, and you might be saying, well, I want to get the most fulfillment from my meals, so I want to eat on the most colorful plate possible. And if that's you, then that's fine. But the thing is, the more anticipation that you create and the more mental fulfillment you get from a meal, the harder that your body and nervous system are working to digest that meal, and the more cortisol you have to secrete to digest it. So for your optimal nutrient partitioning and body composition, you actually want to make your meals as less stimulating as possible. So the colors that I'm going to recommend for whatever you're eating out of, plates, bowls, cups, whatever it is going to be neutral colors and earth tones. And this ties into the theory of colors and what activates our sympathetic nervous system. And if you haven't seen that video, make sure to click this link so you can check that out as well. But earth tones like beige, light brown, or even cream colors are going to do wonders for your satiety and appetite regulation. If you think about it, evolutionarily, our ancestors would have been eating off of the ground or surrounded by these earth tones. So it makes sense that our brain is primed to understand nutrition when it's presented in colors that remind it of the earth. So this is one of the most unique tips that I think is going to help you on your weight loss journey. So just make sure to try it out and come back and comment down below what the results were. And now the final tip is to eat your meals warm. Not cold, not hot, but warm. What you want to do is let your meal cool. Whether it's fresh off the stove or fresh out of the oven, you want to let it come down to a lukewarm temperature. So by keeping your food at a lukewarm temperature, or a temperature that's consistent with your surroundings, you're again giving your brain and your nervous system less variables to deal with. And the less variables that we have to deal with, the easier it's going to be to determine satiety. Now I recognize that a lot of these tips might be making your meal sound a little bit less appetizing. It may make it seem like less of an ordeal, like it's less of an experience to make a meal. But the whole point of this is to help your nervous system by reducing stimulation from the food that you're getting. And by reducing these external variables, you're going to be able to focus on what it is that you're actually eating and not the experience of everything else. You're going to be way more in tune with things like, what does my blood sugar feel like after this meal? Did this work for my digestion? Am I feeling as energetic as I usually do after I had this last meal? It's definitely helped me be more in tune with what food intolerances I have and how my digestion is running, and I think it's going to do the same for you. As with all my tips, this isn't something that you need to do all the time, because if you always restrict yourself, then you're going to have a huge dopamine spike when you do have that donut, or you do have some ice cream, and then you're going to be overwhelmed and want to binge. But by doing this periodically, it's going to help reset your sense of dopamine and once again get that much closer to mastering your nervous system. And the best part is, it's going to make it that much more fulfilling when you go out with friends on a Friday night for a fantastic dinner at your favorite restaurant and finish off with an ice cream sandwich for dessert. As always, let me know down in the comments below. Did you find this video useful? Are you going to try anything that I've outlined here? Are these tips that you found out for yourself? And if so, how are they working out for you? Or is there any other content that you'd like to see me cover? And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you can stay up to date when I post new videos, and follow me on my journey as I recover from burnout. So good luck making your foods less stimulating, and I'll see you in the next video.